Hi everyone, good afternoon. I hope you all are doing great. Thank you so much for joining in today. In today's session, we're going to have a conversation around that why success will be elusive as a lawyer to you if you're not good at communication skills. And what exactly can you do to fix your communication skills and get better at it? Before I start with the webinar, I would like to introduce myself. I am Vanita Bhatnagar. I work as a legal editor at LawSikho. My job requires me to interact with a lot of students, and most of these students have told me that they're not very good at their communication skills. They feel that they understand the law really well. They are working very hard to grasp more legal knowledge. They're good when it comes to legal reasoning, but however, they all struggle when it comes to communication. They feel that they're not able to communicate their ideas that powerfully at meetings, or when they have to brief a senior counsel. So this is a common concern that I've come across. Therefore, we decided to have a webinar on this topic, so to see why communication is important as a lawyer, where all at different stages it plays a key role. So if you start speaking from a point where you have to interact with a client, you require to have good communication skills. When you speak about interacting with the judges, arguing before the bench, you again need good communication skills. Also, when you're negotiating, right? When you're negotiating any transaction, because as a lawyer, I mean, if you're not into litigation, if you're on the corporate side of it, you'll be required to do a lot of negotiations on a day-to-day basis. And again, for having a successful negotiation, you need to have a strong communication skills. Now, this is what we're going to focus in today's session. I would also like to share a small incident from my own experience. So while I was interning at NDA, I had a similar experience where I felt that my legal knowledge is sound. I am well versed with the laws that I was required to work on. But then why still I'm not able to communicate clearly with my seniors? So typically at NDA, what used to happen was that in the morning, so before we start with our day, in the morning for 5 to 10 minutes, we used to discuss any recent updates that has come up. Okay, so this was like a practice at the firm for every day. So before they actually begin with their day, they will block like a certain time, and they will have a discussion on any regulatory update that has come out, maybe by RBI, SEBI, any important ruling that's been released, any important landmark judgment that has been delivered by the court. They will just give certain minutes to the discussion. And as an intern also, we were allowed to participate in that discussion, but I always fumbled. So even when I had points to express, even when I had ideas that I would wanted to share with the team, when the time would come to speak, at that moment, I would just get very anxious and start fumbling. I could not express back at that time. I could not express myself very clearly to my seniors. Then I realized, I introspected a little, and I realized, why is this happening? So a major roadblock why this happened was because I assumed, I believed that the people in the room are much more informed than me. They already know. So whatever law we are discussing on, they are already well versed with this. They understand it completely. What value will I add when speaking in the conversation? What would I be bringing onto the table? So this was a major roadblock that I faced. And then I realized that it's not about what others think, how you're communicating, right? The first step is that you should be able to deliver what your thought process is. How many of you here agree with me that sometimes they are not able to communicate effectively because they think that the other person in the room is so well informed that probably their opinion will not even count? Is there anybody who feels this challenge? Kanishka feels that. Anybody else who has also come across something similar? Okay, Dinkesh also feels that. All right, all right. So I believe, in my opinion, 85% of the communication, 85% of the time in lawyers' life is involved in communication. So either you are speaking with your client, or maybe you are speaking to at the bench when you're arguing the matter, or when you are interacting with your own team. So most of the time is gone into communications, right? Some or the other format. And despite your legal knowledge, okay, despite the fact how good you are in reasoning out, informing your arguments, if you're not able to communicate that properly to people, I think it will get very difficult to work as a lawyer, right? How many of you here agree with me? If you're not able to communicate well, it'll be a major problem, right? Yes. So before we move further, I want to understand from all of you, what are the challenges that you guys face when it comes to communication? What are the roadblocks that you feel are there when it comes to communication? Anything from your personal experience? Okay, Dinkesh talks about nervousness. All right. Fluency. All right. We're going to address all of these in today's session. All right. So first, we're going to look at what is the importance of communication to lawyers, and then we're going to address what are the steps that we can incorporate in our lives so that we are able to speak fluently with confidence, so that we're not nervous, right? So this is what we're going to decode in today's class. Anybody else who has views with respect to communicating with clients before a bench, anything that you would like to share? Also, I'm sharing my screen. Wanted to have a quick check if my screen is visible to all of you. You can just put it in the chat box if you can see my screen. All right, my screen is visible. Great, great. Okay, so first and foremost, we're going to understand that why effective communication is important for lawyers. Now, communication, if we look at it from a lawyer's perspective, there are two essential elements to it. One is interaction with the clients when you're trying to retrieve information for your client. And the second is whatever you have understood from the client, you have to put forward your opinions before the judge, right? So if you look at it, you can take it as a lawyer is like a mediator. Okay, so what the lawyer is doing is, the lawyer is trying to understand the points from the client, and then the lawyer is communicating those points before the bench. So therefore, it is important that a lawyer is able to understand very clearly what is that the client is wanting from that particular case, right? What is the objective of the client? What are they looking for? Okay, so that understanding needs to be very clear. Then only you will be able to put forward the demands of your client before the bench, right? So that becomes the step number one. Okay, now in this, again, when you are communicating, now if your communication skills are not that sharp, what will happen is that there will be a lot of misunderstanding between you and your client. Okay, there might be also misunderstanding in the way you're carrying your practice. So not everything you can do by yourself, right? You'll have to delegate certain tasks to your juniors, and if you're not able to do that properly, okay, then there will be a gap, right? So what you need to look at is that whatever your ideas are that you're wanting to communicate, you should be able to do that effectively, so that you're minimizing the risk of any misunderstanding. What happens when there are misunderstandings? If there are misunderstandings between you and your client will never recommend you. No matter how good you are as a lawyer, your client will never recommend you to others, because there was a dispute or because there was a misunderstanding between the two of you, right? Also, if let's say you are delegating your work to your juniors, right, if you're not able to communicate efficiently, again, there will be a major roadblock. People will not understand what you're saying. Maybe you asked somebody to do A and they did B, right? So it's going to hamper the entire process. Therefore, as lawyers, it is very important for us to be very clear with our communication, right? And the second thing is to be able to have better client relationships. So whether you're running your individual practice, whether you're working as an intern, whether you're working in a law firm or as an in-house counsel, the the ultimate objective is to be able to have more clients and to be able to have meaningful relationship with these clients. Now all of this will be able to happen when you're able to foster those relationships better. How does that happen? That happens when you're able to understand your clients. So this has got nothing to do with legal communication. Okay, you're not telling them how they can win their case. You're not telling them what is the legal argument here. You're not telling them about the case laws, right? That's not a kind of communication you're having with your client. To foster more trust from your client, you need to understand your client better and speak in their language. Okay, that is to say, let's say if your client is somebody who enjoys chole bhature from Chandni Chowk. Okay, so probably you'll have to understand their mentality, from where they come from, and then connect to your clients. Okay, so these are the two most crucial importance of having effective communication skills. Of course, advocacy is there, right? I mean, if you are good at communication, then only you'll able to make impressive arguments before the judges. So effective communication is definitely there. But besides that, when it comes to your client, is avoiding misunderstandings and to be able to foster better relationships. These both are important parts when it comes to communication. All right, now let's look at how to become an effective communicator. What is that we can do? What are the techniques that we can adopt so that we are able to communicate effectively? Now, in this, the number one is to have clarity in thought. Now, what do you mean by having clarity in thought? A lot of times, what happens is that because you don't know very clearly what idea you're communicating, why are you communicating it, you might muddle up. Okay, and because of which you'll start fumbling. So people who were talking about that, fluency is an issue. So fluency is an issue a lot of times because we are not clear as to what are we communicating. Now this is again very important when we talk about in situations where we put in a business meeting. Okay, when there is a client meeting, maybe a business meeting, internal meeting within your own team, right? In all these scenarios, if you're not clear as to what is that you want to communicate with the other person and what is the agenda, what you're sharing is also important, and why you're sharing, what is your intention of sharing that communication is also very important here. I'll give you an example. So at my job, I am required to communicate feedback to students with respect to how well are they writing. All right. So my job is to identify what are the gaps in their writing, and then I train them as to how they can write more efficiently. Now, here, if I'm not clear as to what is the gap, okay, if I myself don't know whether it's the grammar that's been wrong, whether it is, they're not citing enough illustrations. So if I'm not clear in that, if I cannot pinpoint very categorically that, A, B, C, D are the gaps in this particular document, then only I'll be able to ask the other person to work on it and make it better. Right? The more clearly I communicate this, the more better output I will get. If I do not say it clearly that, you need to include examples. If I do not mention clearly that I want you to include examples from an everyday life. I might also want to give an example of what kind of examples I'm looking, right? So the better I keep getting at it, the clearer I keep getting it for the other person to comprehend what are you delivering, what are you saying. Okay, it'll become easier for them to understand where are you coming from. Now here, your intention also plays a very important role. For me, in these kind of situations, my intention is that my students should be able to understand the feedback, the value of it, like what are the different gaps they are able to identify, and where can they do value addition, right? This is what my purpose is. My purpose is that my students should be able to write better. Okay. Now for doing this, it is also very important for me to keep in mind that the kind of communication that I'm happening with them, it should encourage them to write more and more articles, right? To write more. If my communication is such that that will deter them, they will not enjoy the process. Okay. They will instead just give up that, okay, whatever your feedback is, I don't want to work on it. So it becomes very important for me to keep the purpose in mind. Similarly, you might apply it to any situation. Okay. So let's say as an intern, if you're interning at a law firm, and your ultimate goal is to get hired in that particular firm. So you would see that, okay, you would want to communicate a lot of ideas to the firm as to how you will be able to contribute better, right? So number one would become that you should be able to communicate your thoughts very clearly. And number two is to keep your purpose intact. So whatever your purpose is, you need to speak in accordance with that so that you're able to achieve the objective. All right. The number two is delivery. So once you're sure about what you want to speak, the second comes how you speak it. Okay. So in communication, if you're speaking, let's say, very fast, the other person will not understand the communication. Okay. So when it comes to speaking, it is just not about delivering your ideas. It is also about getting understood. So the person should be able to understand what you are saying. All right. For that, you need to ensure that your delivery is such that it is landing on the other person. So maybe let's say when you're speaking in a meeting, okay, when you're adding a point in a meeting, maybe you want to quickly ask a question to the other person. What is that you get from the discussion? Okay, like this is specifically important when you are delegating a task to someone. When you're delegating a task to a junior or to any intern to do something, you might want to quickly check on them that what you have understood after this, right? Now for somebody from the other side of it, when they are interning, they would also want to ask that I've understood ABCD. Is that what you mean, or there is something more to it, right? So delivery, how your communication is landing on others, is also very crucial to communication, specifically in a lawyer and a client relationship. Okay. So you want to ensure that you've captured the interest of your client clearly. There are no gaps in that. Okay, let's say your client said that I want to close this deal at X amount. If it doesn't happen, then I don't want to go move ahead with the transaction. Let's say this is what your client told to you. In this scenario, it is important that you're very clear on the mark that your client has told you. If that is not being told, you would maybe want to ask further questions on it, right? So ensure that your delivery is powerful. To do that, what you can do is you can be loud, okay, so that the other person is able to hear you very clearly. Also, you communicate slowly. You don't have to rush through what you're saying. If you will rush through what you're saying, the other person might not be able to grasp your ideas, right? So just to do a quick recap, number one is to be very clear as to what you're communicating, and number two is to intentionally pay attention how you are communicating what you're communicating, right? Then the third point is to use leadership language. Now, what is leadership language? Leadership language means that the choice of words that you're doing in your communication are confident. Okay, so you might now, I remember somebody from the audience saying that they feel nervous when communicating. Now, an important thing here is that even if you're nervous, you should not use the language or not rely on words that eliminates nervousness. Like, for example, maybe, perhaps, okay, I think, I guess. these are the words that you should clearly avoid from your communication, because these are these words will not empower another person to take an action or to understand what you're saying clearly. Okay, if let's say someone asks you something and you say, I guess so, I'm not sure. Okay, so if you're actually not sure, maybe you want to patch on, like, who is the correct person from where you can get this information, right? Instead of just leaving the communication at maybe, I don't know, I guess, right? So be mindful of the kind of words that you're using in expressing your ideas. If you start with maybe, your client will also believe that, okay, maybe this person knows, maybe this person doesn't know, right? Then another important concept is listening skills. Now, to become an effective communicator, one thing is definitely that you need to be able to communicate your ideas to others, but also at the same time, it is equally important to have strong listening skills. Why is this important? So if you're not listening carefully, you will not be able to respond effectively. And if you're not responding effectively, the communication will fall flat. This is a major thing that happens when people are communicating with judges. Okay, so if the judge has asked you a question, you need to listen to it very carefully and then respond in accordance to what they have asked. Let's say the judge asked you whether Mr. X was present at the moment of the crime. Okay, so the first answer should be yes or no, and then begin with the explanation, right? If you're starting with maybe, again, it's not clear, because maybe cannot be a solution to this, right? So it's either yes or no, and then you move on to explaining the bit. Don't start with explanation first. First, it needs to come out very clearly whether yes, Mr. X was present at the crime scene, or no, whether Mr. X was not present at the crime scene. Okay, so for this, it is important that you're paying attention, you're listening very carefully to what's been asked or what's been said by your client, and then you respond effectively. Okay, you should also practice active listening. Now, when I say active listening, it means that you are thinking through the communication that has happened. So you're not just listening to what has been said, you're also processing that information in your head and thinking about what are the different possible scenarios that can happen because of that communication, and asking all the relevant questions at that point in time. Okay, so developing strong listening skills is important here. Then the next thing is that you need to know your audience. Okay, so you cannot one thing is important here to understand is that your clients might not be well versed with the formal legal language that you are using before the court. Okay, they might not be well versed with concepts like abducting. Okay, might not know concepts as copyright assignment. Okay, so you need to understand whom are you communicating with. Your communication will be different when you're doing it in front of a bench, when you're doing it with a client. Also, you need to understand what type of a client it is. Okay, so if that client is, let's say, at a very young age, so probably you would want to build your communication and use your words accordingly, right? And similarly, let's say if you're speaking to somebody who is slightly older, okay, you would again want to be very careful about the choice of words that you're choosing. So before interaction with anybody, you need to understand your audience. You need to know where are they coming from and speak from that perspective. Okay, now let's say if I start explaining the concept of negligence to somebody who does not even know and who has no understanding about law, it'll be slightly difficult for them if I only speak in legal language, right? Then for me to be able to understand them effectively what is negligence, I need to use a lot of illustrations, I need to give a lot of examples so that they are able to get a hold of the concept, right? So this is what you need to do also when you're interacting with clients or at a business meeting anywhere. You need to have an understanding about who is your audience and then structure your communication accordingly. Then the next thing comes is your body language. Now your body language does a lot of talking. Okay, so how you're rolling your eyes, how whether you're making appropriate eye contact or not, if you're slouching, okay, it all gives cues to the person that how actively you are listening to the conversation, how present you are, right? Now, for being an effective communicator, it is not only essential that you're paying attention to your own body language, but also to others. You also need to take cues from the body language of others to whom you're communicating. Pay attention. See, are they getting bored? If they're getting bored, maybe you would want to make the conversation a slightly more lighter, right? If you think they're losing interest, you would want to ask them a question at that point in time to make them engage again in your conversation. Okay, so a quick question to all of you here: do you guys think body language plays an important role? Are you able to pay attention to your body language while speaking? How many of you pay attention to your body language while speaking? How are you delivering? Madhu pays attention. Okay, that's good. That's good. Dinkesh, little bit. Okay, so this is one important piece of communication, that you have to pay attention to body language, to yours as well, so that you are also appearing confident in front of others while speaking. Okay, and at the same time, you're also paying attention to the body language of others to understand at what level is the communication going. All right, do you guys also pay attention to the body language of others? Yes or no, maybe quickly. Yes. Okay, that's good. That's a very good part of being an effective communicator. You need to pay attention to non-verbal cues. So communication is not just about verbal, it is also non-verbal. The next thing is building a rapport. Now, building a rapport with your clients is very important if you want to build your practice. Okay, if you're not building a rapport with uh, your clients will not be happy. They'll be not satisfied. If they'll be not happy, if they are not satisfied, they're not going to refer you to other people. Okay, so you need to build a rapport with your client. Now, for sometimes it so happen that you might just kick it off very well from the very beginning. Okay, you might have like super good interactions with people, and you're able to drive through the interaction. Okay, you start liking the other person is also inclined towards in hearing you. It happens very organically and naturally. But in business, okay, in law, it is important that you're able to build a rapport even with people you might not organically like. Okay, because it doesn't matter whether you like your client or not. As long as they are giving you business, uh, you should be able to develop a rapport with them, right? Now, how do you do that? For doing that, first of all, try and figure out if there are common interest areas between the two of you. If there are, then try and rely more upon those. Okay, so let's say I have a client who's also a football fan, and I'm also a football fan. So maybe those are the things that you can speak about besides your main thing. All right, after that, it is also important that you're paying attention towards uh, how is the behavior of your client. Maybe your client gets very anxious. Okay, so you would to maybe calm them down a little. Okay, so all of that, this happens when you're able to build a rapport with the person. So pay attention to this. So whatever clients that you're working with, ensure that your communication is such that they are you're able to build long lasting relationships with them. The next thing is empathy. Okay, now this is again very much related to the point that we just discussed, that you need to be empathetic towards your client. Now, this is very important. Why? Because see, understand that your client might not be accustomed to the legal proceedings, right? Your client, it may be their first time that they're witnessing a legal proceeding, so they might be very anxious. Okay, they don't know what to expect from the entire procedure. And also, most of the time when the clients are coming to a lawyer, they are a bit stressed. Okay, I mean, nobody just goes to a lawyer for the fun of it, right? I mean, if they're coming to you, there's certainly something that is bothering them. That is why they've reached out to a lawyer. So it becomes very important that you are comforting them. You are also trying to understand what are they feeling. Okay, so it is just not you telling them black and white that, hey, if we apply for a bail at this moment, your bail will be rejected for XYZ reason. Understand that your client will not be able to reason that with you. Your client would rather, so if the client knows that that their bail is going to get rejected, they, they're going to feel very upset about the whole situation. Okay, so for ensuring that you have a happy and a satisfied client, it is very important that you're able to understand their feelings. You're able to resonate with them. You're able to counsel them. Okay, you need to be empathetic towards their feelings. Sometimes they might be asking questions which are not very pertinent. So you need to understand that they're new to this proceeding. Okay, they're new to the everything that you're talking about. So this is again a crucial factor while communicating. Be empathetic towards your client. Another thing is asking for feedback. So let's say if you've recently started doing a lot of public speaking, or if you are, even when you're presenting arguments before a judge, you can ask your peers, your fellow colleague members for a feedback. Okay, like how is your delivery, whether you were good or bad, because sometimes we might not be able to see our own gaps or our own mistakes, but others are able to point that out very quickly. Okay, so use that to your advantage. Always ask for feedback whenever you can, even from client. I mean, so after you've given your service, you would want to understand from your client how is their experience with you. Okay, did they feel comfortable? uh, were they always anxious during the proceedings? How was it for them? So try and incorporate feedback from your clients, from your fellow colleagues. So when you're arguing, maybe you want to ask your fellow colleagues what they felt about you while you were arguing. Okay, for instance, even while you are working in a law firm, let's say you happen to pitch an idea during a meeting, you would want to check on with your peers that, how were you while communicating? Were you good? Were you bad? So always look for feedback from people, your mentors, your clients, your peers, anybody. All right. uh, then the next thing is that you pick the right medium for communicating. Now, this is also slightly related to the point where we spoke about know your audience. There might be people who are not comfortable on WhatsApp. There might be people who might not be comfortable using emails. They only prefer phone calls. So if you're dropping emails to them, if you're dropping WhatsApp text to them, this might not be an effective delivery of your communication, right? Probably a simple phone call will be much more effective in that situation. On the other hand, let's say there is a person who's not very comfortable taking phone calls, probably because they are very busy or whatever the situation is. Maybe you would want to look for alternative solutions, dropping a WhatsApp, dropping an informal email. All right, so you need to now this will only happen, you'll be able to come to this point only when you're able to identify your audience. What is the mindset of your audience? Only then you will be able to decide what is the right medium for. Okay, so pick the right medium. So when you pick a right medium, it automatically lands very effectively on your audience, on the recipient. The recipient is much more confident. Okay, the last thing is that to be confident in your speech. Now, to a lot of people, they feel that they are not confident while speaking. Understand that this happens primarily because of two reasons. Number one is that maybe you're not fully prepared as to what you have to speak, right? You're not sure, there is no clarity as to what is that you're looking to communicate. In those scenarios, you will not be confident because there is no clarity in your own brain as to what you're communicating, right? So that is something that you would want to fix. by again looking at the first point that we discussed, right? Have clarity. So once you have clarity as to what you're delivering, what you're speaking, you'll automatically be way more confident. The second thing could be you're not fully prepared. So if I ask you to deliver a talk maybe on gender diversity, and if you're not aware about that area, okay, if you do not know or understand the topic, of course you will not be confident to speak on such a topic, right? So assess yourself. Now for confidence, for building confidence, it is very important that you are constantly assessing yourself. It is very unlikely that somebody will come and tell you that, hey, listen, you know what, you lack confidence. It's very rare, okay? I mean, maybe if you have a mentor, they might communicate that to you, but however, it doesn't generally happen. People will not pinpoint you because you don't have good communication skills. However, you'll be able to see the impact of it on your overall growth, right? I mean, your success will be slower, okay, because you're not confident, because you're not able to do your communications effectively. For that, you'll have to do a lot of self assessment. Now by self assessment is again plugging in all that we have discussed so far, paying attention to body language, asking for feedback. This will, all these little things that we've discussed in throughout the session, all the different pointers, they will help you in in building your confidence. Also identify the gaps. Like for instance, for some people it could be, they're not confident when it comes to pronunciation of certain words. They're not confident when it comes to grammar. They're not they might be very good at writing, but they're not good at communicating, they're not good at speaking. Okay, so you need to identify what is that gap area for you. Okay, you need to be very active in doing that, and once you're able to do that, you will understand that how can you fix it. So for fixing it, it will require you to identify the gap and then work on those gaps. Narendra, do you have a question? I'll just allow you to speak, or alternatively you can also type it in the chat box. Narendra, if you're speaking, we are not able to hear you, okay? So whatever your question is, I've given you speaking rights. You can tell us your question or maybe put it in the chat box. So confidence is the key. Confidence will also, so if you're confident, no, your clients will also be able to better relate with you, okay? They feel much more trust in the people they've invested. Understand that you're driving money from your clients, you're asking for money, and they will be able to put in their money on you only when they see that you're confident. If they see that, okay, this person is not confident enough, this lawyer, while speaking only, this lawyer is so nervous, how will they present my case before the judge, right? So therefore, pay attention to this aspect, okay? नरेंद्र, so what I'm saying is कि confidence जो है वो बहुत जरूरी होता है communication में, all right? If you're not confident, your client will not be able to invest in you. So therefore, to be able to gain trust from your client, you need to up your confidence, you need to work on it. आप self assess करिए, आप खुद को देखिए, खुद जज करके देखिए कहाँ पे gaps हैं, उन gaps को पता लगाइए और उस पे work करिए. I mean, it cannot be same for everybody. Grammar cannot be an issue for everybody. For someone, it could be pronunciation. For others, it could be that, I'm able to have basic conversations, but however, when it comes to intensive discussions or maybe impromptu speaking, when I have to impromptu reply to a judge or to a client or, in a business meeting, I get nervous. So वो identification बहुत जरूरी है. जब आप ये चीज identify कर पाएंगे, आप उसके बाद ही एक develop कर पाएंगे methods to fix those, right? Dinkesh is asking how body language, what are the things to be done? For body language, first thing is that you need to appear confident, okay, in your body language. How quick tips for that is having a clear eye contact. Okay, so when you're speaking with the person on the table, ensure that you're having an eye contact with the person. You're not fidgeting too much, not moving your hands a lot, not rolling your eyes a lot. Okay, you need to look straight into the eyes of that person. Okay, even when you're moving your hands, your hand movement needs to be very controlled. Okay, so let's say if somebody is speaking to you and you're just slouching, all right, that will not be a good indicator of your body language, right? Also pay attention to the body language of others. Okay, so let's say if somebody is looking at the ceiling, not paying attention to what you are speaking, that means that that person is not actively listening to you. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Dinkesh. If there are still parts that you think are not answered, please let me know. All right. So coming to this, from here, I will also take you down to the course that we have built up for our law students and lawyers, practitioners. All right. The idea behind this course is that what I spoke about, that people should be able to identify the different gaps. And once they have identified their gaps, this will actually help them in building their skills, in improving their communication. I will just quickly run you through what are the different things that are addressed in this course. All right, and who is this course for? So this is our course in Diploma in English Communication for Lawyers. All right, in this particular course, we are focusing on speaking English, all right, oral advocacy. We are focusing on writing and also listening, and also how you speak accurately. So a lot of times what happens is that, people exactly know what they want to communicate. There is clarity in thought, but there is no clarity in words. The words that they're picking for that communication are not correct. They're not clear with that. So this is what these are the different things that we try and build during this course. All right. Also, it is priced at 50,000, but if somebody wants to enroll, they can also pay 10,000 and then pay the rest of the money in installment. All right. So that option is, so it's not necessary that you pay the entire amount at once. You can also pay the first installment. All right. And pay the rest of the amount eventually. So with respect to this course, it is created by Vanita Bhatnagar, who is an expert in communication. She's been training professionals, like she speaks multiple language, and she trained people with communication, all right, how to get better at communication. She's also trained a lot of lawyers on this aspect. What are the different skills that you can expect to learn in this course are to develop a powerful vocabulary. A lot of times people have this roadblock that they do not know about legal phrases, right? So these are specifically addressed in this course. They train you while teaching this course. We will be training you on how to build your legal vocabulary, how to use those words, how to create sentences. People tell us that they know the words, they are equipped with the meaning, but they don't really know how to use them in a sentence. So in this course we do a lot of that work. We enable people to understand words and how to use them in a particular sentence and a context. We've also spoken about how to use appropriate language for various specific legal scenarios. I mean, so it's important to understand that when you're interacting with somebody who's working on mergers and acquisition, the kind of terms, the kind of vocabulary that you will use there will be different while addressing a client who's come to you for a white collar crime, maybe. Okay, so it's important to understand how you speak in different legal scenarios. So when it comes to negotiations, client negotiations, or negotiating a transaction, you might be required to be slightly more aggressive in your communication, right? However, when it comes to criminal matters, you are expected to be much more empathetic towards your client. Okay, so we teach you different approaches towards client communication, how to do client counseling. Now when you're getting a client, Your client might not tell you everything, okay, because in their head they know that, okay, that they was to communicate ABCD and they've done that. They might not understand or know about the things they are missing on, right? So therefore it becomes, we teach you through different exercises. There are different exercises. We'll be also be doing mock with the client so that you get better at client communications. Writing notices and replies, as you all know that, uh, as a lawyer you're constantly required to write opinion pieces for your client. A client might seek an opinion on a particular matter. uh, it is important that the various concepts to it. You need to be able to present, explain the legal issue very clearly. You should be able to keep those opinion briefs very short. They need to be crisp and concise. If they're running over pages and pages, person will not be able to understand that, right? So this is another thing that will be taken care in this course. Drafting documents in perfect English. So a lot of times what happens is, when people have practiced in their vernacular language, they kind of lose a track, okay? And if they have to appear before an appellate authority, a high court or a Supreme Court, they're not very confident about drafting documents in English. So this is specifically taken care of during this course. We also command over important technical terms and jargons. uh, Also teach mediation. Mediation is also a very important skill for lawyers. So in this particular course we teach you how to do that. Article writing, of course, again, it's very crucial, because as lawyers, you cannot advertise yourself, right? You cannot say that, hey, hello, you know what, I am very good at posh laws. You cannot do that. However, you can do that indirectly. You can do that while writing good articles. So you're not directly pitching your services, but you're trying to tell your audience maybe how well you understand a particular legal issue, right? Which will again help your client develop trust in you. So these are the certain activities that we take in this course. We also talk about communication for business development, because as a lawyer, if you do practicing independently, or even when you're working at a law firm, okay, so maybe at an associate level, at an entry level, you're not required, or you're not thinking in the terms of BD. But however, when you grow in the hierarchy, business development becomes a crucial component. You should be able to get clients to the company, right? So this is something is will be addressed in this court. The next thing is crafting powerful courtroom arguments. So we have lessons on advocacy, on how to do better advocacy, right? Enhancing the delivery of arguments and responding to questions. So a lot of times people tell me that they're good with the arguments that they have prepared, but when the opposing counsel raises a point, that is where they suffer a roadblock. They're not able to handle rebuttals very effectively. So they're confident with their own arguments, but not very confident when it comes to either responding to judges or handling rebuttals. So this is again specifically taken care of in this course. We also talk about how do you prepare for meetings. Like for instance, whenever you're walking in a meeting, it is you should understand what is the agenda of that particular meeting. Why is this happening? In case if you do not know that, you would like to answer that question very clearly to the organizer, that you know what is the agenda of this meeting, so that you're better prepared, so that you know what is expected out of you, right? We also will be giving you advice on how to prepare for job interviews. There will be mock rounds. We'll also be talking about effective communication, how to train juniors, because uh, if you are able to handle the matters on your own, but you're not able to deliver it to your juniors, then that again becomes a barrier, right? Everything you will not be able to do on your own. You need a good team to achieve your objectives, right? For enabling that, it is again very crucial that you are able to make your juniors understand what are the different things you want them to do, right? So with your colleagues, reporting managers, all of this is an important communication in all directions, okay? So we look at the 360 degree level. whatever different things are required in a lawyer's communication from the client's perspective, from judge's perspective, from colleagues' perspective. This is all addressed in this course. If you have any questions, you can ask me. These are the different exercises. So it's a 12-month course, and for every week we are doing a specific exercise. Okay, we also teach grammar. There's a lot of emphasis that's been given on grammar as well, because if your grammar is not strong, rest of the other things will fall flat. So due attention is being given to grammar. Okay, listening and oratory skills. There are a lot of mock sessions that happen throughout to be able to handle these kind of communication. Writing, specific emphasis is given to writing so that you're able to draft different pieces, be it an article, be it a handbook, be it a research paper, all right, be it an RTI, FIR, all of those things are covered in the course. Narendra, you're asking something about the webinars that are running these days. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question clearly. If you can tell me more about it. Dinkesh is asking about how to develop leadership language. Okay, so for developing leadership languages, understand how leaders speak. Okay, so when a leader is speaking, they, through their conversation, they are instilling confidence in you. All right. So similarly, when you are speaking, you need your communication needs to be very definitive. It cannot, if your communication is shaky, the other person will not have confidence in what you're saying. So therefore, leadership language is also very positive and uplifting. So that will also help people around you to understand the message that you're delivering. So let's say if you're giving a feedback to a junior on their work, a leadership language will only talk about the gaps, and we'll talk about techniques on how to improve that, right? There is no personal comment being made on the person who's doing that work. Okay. However, if you're making personal comments and not addressing the problem, it will not serve your purpose. Your junior will still not be able to understand what you said. Your junior will not understand on what gaps they need to work on. And again, it will be the same loop that will keep going on, right? So therefore, it's important that you make a habit of using leadership language. Okay, and how to develop that is, number one, pay attention. So in your circle, whoever you consider as a leader, you pay attention as to how they are communicating. It is based on using a lot of positive expressions. Okay, and a solution based approach. So a leader is somebody who's also giving solution to a problem. So this should categorically be reflective in your communication. So when you're addressing, when you're answering, when you are delivering something, you are able to solve someone's problem. Okay, I hope that helps you, Dinkesh. If there are still any queries, you can let me know. So yes, this English communication course is useful for people who are also pursuing CS. So we are running a host of webinars these days on English communication. That is primarily because this is one of the important skills in whichever area you're practicing. And it is relevant for everybody at whatever level you are in your practice. So even when you're working as an intern, these lessons, these skills are essential. Even if you're working at an entry level, the understanding of communication skills is important. Even when you are working, let's say at a senior level, again, these skills are important. Okay, so that is why we're giving a lot of emphasis for this month on English communication, right? So it's not about just enrolling in the course. So we are also trying to tell you about the course that we're running, but at the same time, through these sessions, in our own way, we're trying to make an attempt to bridge the gap wherever we can. So that is what is the purpose of all of these sessions that we are holding. So if you've attended these sessions, you would have realized how in every session, we are tackling a different problem, right? Like in my yesterday's conversation was around what are the different habits that you can build in your everyday life so that you're able to improve your English communication. We recently also had a workshop on where Mr. Mukherjee and 𝗵𝘄𝗆𝗂𝗏 addressed how to improve your communication in 12 months, right? They discussed the entire roadmap, entire plan. So this is what the focus is. Communication skills are important no matter at what level you're practicing. And that is why we're teaching. So in every 1 hour, so these sessions are for 1 hour, and in 1 hour, we try and bring you different elements of communication. So like in today's sessions, we looked at why is it important for a lawyer to have effective communication skills to be successful? What could be the roadblocks, right? If you're not communicating successfully, it might be difficult for you for getting promotions, right? To having more sustainable client relationships. All of those would be a major roadblock. And then we looked at what are the 10 different things that you can do to actually improve your communication skills, right? Any other questions, anybody? Dinkesh, did that answer your question as to how to develop the leadership language? So I think that is it from my end. Okay, Narendra. So Narendra is saying that English communication skill is not improved, what they can do. All right. So for this, number one, I think, Narendra, it's very important for you to understand where is the gap. Is the gap in your grammar? If the gap is in your grammar, probably you need to take specific lessons to work on that. If the gap is with respect to being able to communicate, so communication as such is a very broad term. In that broad term, you will need to specifically identify where does the problem lie, and then bit by bit we try to fix it. One thing I can understand is grammar, of course, because if our grammar is not that great, everything else falls apart. So first thing is to maybe tackle grammar and then work on to the other bits. All right. Dinkesh is talking about that there was an interruption. So, all right, I'll just repeat myself. So, when I spoke about leadership language is positive and empowering. Okay. So, to give you an example, let's say you have to communicate feedback on the work of a junior, on what junior has done. All right. Here in this scenario, if your communication is very personal, okay, you're making remarks on the person that you don't even know how to do this, do you think this kind of communication will help the person to get the job done? No, it will only disempower them, right? So your communication needs to be such that it is empowering. Now, when I say the communication needs to be empowering, it means that you're using positive words, right? You're not saying that, oh, you will not be able to do that. You're rather showing them the means as to how to get this job done, right? While giving a feedback, maybe you're telling them X is the gap and here is how you can fill this gap, right? That will help them to work better on the task that they're doing currently, instead of the person telling them that, oh, you don't even know how to do that. So this is leadership language. Another example could be that you are being very decisive. So the choice of words that you're using are very decisive in nature. You're not relying on maybe. Maybe like let's say a simple example. I'm asking Dinkesh that did Narendra come to the session? Let's say you've not really paid attention to the fact that whether Narendra was actually present in the session or not. So you may say maybe. Okay, so that means that I can't rely on you for this bit of information, right? Instead of either you telling me I'm not sure whether he was there or not, but let me just quickly check through my list and confirm, right? So it's a solution based approach. Your communication is solution based. You're not trying to deflect questions. You're trying to offer a solution to what's been asked. Does that answer your question, Dinkesh? Brajesh is saying that their vocabulary is weak and they're not able to recall words very fast. All right. So for developing your vocabulary, we did a webinar recently. It will be up on the LawSikho channel. You can watch that entire recording. That is specifically on the subject matter that you're asking on how to build your vocabulary. To address this question briefly here, you need to understand one thing, that you might know the meaning of 100 words, but probably you'll be only using like the 33% of it. Why this happens is because we are able to memorize lesser words. We might know the meaning of a lot more words, but when we are speaking, when we are using those words, it's very limited. Okay, so to work on that, you need to be able to work on it diligently every day, right? This requires a lot of deliberate working. What you need to do is you need to pick one word daily and start learning it, start using it in a sentence. When you use it in a sentence, when you frame a sentence by yourself, you're able to understand the context. Sometimes we are not able to recall a particular word because we're not clear with their pronunciation. If you're not clear with the pronunciation, you will never be able to remember that word or never be able to use that word in your communication. If you see that word, you'll know the meaning of that word. Okay, but you'll not be able to use it in your own communication if your pronunciation is not clear. So focus on those bits, right? Focus on pronunciation. Make a sentence. If you're making a sentence, that will give you idea as to how to use that particular word. You can also form a peer. So while I was talking about the course, so what we also do for our students is that we provide them with a WhatsApp group where there are a lot of people who are also trying to work on their English communication skills, and then we patch them up. So like, let's say Brijesh and I, we want to work on our vocabulary. Maybe, we learn one word together each day, right? Any other questions, anybody so far? I hope that answers your question, Brijesh. Thank you, Dinkesh. Thank you so much. So, like I mentioned, I mean, English communication is just not for lawyers. It is for everybody, because at whichever side you're practicing, okay, even if you're practicing as a company secretary, chartered accountant, or uh, even if you are, let's say, in a corporate job, you will be required to have good communication skills. Otherwise, success will happen only till a point. And from that point, to reach a higher level, you need to be able to communicate effectively, not just within your peers or to your boss, but to your clients, most importantly, right? And identify who are the different stakeholders involved, and then you should be able to structure your communication effectively with everybody, right? Okay, any other questions, anybody so far? If not, we can just conclude the session, and I'm dropping in my number. So whoever wants to enroll in the course, they can just reach out to me. All right. And if at all, if they don't want to enroll in the course, they have few more questions with respect to how to enroll. They maybe want a mentoring session. They can just reach out to me on this number. All right. Thank you so much for joining in.